Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. My name is Thomas Graff. I am filling in today for Cy Kellett. Cy says Guten Tag all the way from the Rhine in Germany, where he is on the excellent Catholic Answers cruise, along with several of our other staff members and a whole lot of really good friends of Catholic Answers. Cy is presumably wearing lederhosen and dousing Hefeweizens and just having a great old time. I've now exhausted my German vocabulary, so I will drop the act right now. But he's having a great time on the Rhine River in Germany. He'll be out for the next week and change. And so in the meantime, you have myself, you'll have Edgar, you'll have a few pre-recorded shows to take you all the way until that blessed day when Cy Kellett returns in studios. As I said, my name is Thomas Graff. I'm the social media manager most of the time here at Catholic Answers, except on these days when I fill in for Cy. And we have a great show lined up for you today. Hour 2, we're going to be talking with Dr. Gregory Popchak of CatholicCounselors.com. We're going to be talking about the sanctity of marriage, what it means to say that marriage is sacred and what people get wrong about preserving the sanctity of marriage. That's going to be a great hour. Make sure you tune in for that. In hour 1, though, we're going to be taking a little bit of a different tack. We're going to be talking about the beauty of the Catholic faith. We're going to be having a great conversation today about the beauty of the Catholic faith. If you want to get on that conversation, you can call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. And joining us for that conversation is a gentleman we've had on this program a few times before to talk about apologetics. He runs the YouTube channel and social media channels Sips with Sarah. Adrian Lawson is his name, and recently he decided he was going to change things up a little bit on his channel and go in more of the direction that we're going to talk about today. So, Adrian, thanks so much for coming back on Catholic Answers Live with us.
Well, thank you. It's always an honor. I wish I could be there in person, but we do have the little one who just popped out a couple of months ago, so I'm sticking at home for the time being. But thank you so much for having me on.
I understand. I can't wait to see the little dude in person when you do manage to bring him down. But yeah, as a father of a little one myself, I would be very scared to make the 2-hour trek down from Orange County, and hope that the baby stayed chill for all 2 hours. That's a miracle in and of itself. So I understand, but. So that kind of brings us into, though, our topic for today, because, as I said, you were running a pretty solid channel on YouTube and on social media called Sips with Sarah, where you engaged in solid apologetical content. As a convert from Lutheranism yourself to the Catholic faith, you were well equipped to deal with many of the objections that our Protestant brothers and sisters have to the Catholic faith, and you did a good job, not only presenting them, but auditing them elsewhere in the Catholic world. And then your child was born prematurely, so naturally you had to pull back a little bit from the spotlight. And then when you came back, you dropped a video not long ago that just said, "I'm quitting Catholic apologetics." And that might have that might have given some of your audience a scare a little bit. I know it certainly made my eyebrows raise a little bit. But why don't you go ahead and tell us just the brief overview. You don't have to recap the whole video, but why did you decide that you were quitting apologetics, and what did you decide to do again instead?
Yeah, well, man. So I, as I talk about in that video, I encountered just some of the beauty of Catholicism, and some of the things about Catholicism that really reached to my heart have nothing to do with the intellectual things that we often discuss, which are very interesting and good things to talk about. But there are just certain things that, like I talk about in the video, there are paintings of Mary, especially if her facial expression is done really well and she, has a very motherly and human look. It just really reaches to my heart in a way that I could never possibly reach somebody with the kind of content I was doing, which was, argumentation, which is very good, like I said. So I just feel that there is a place for both types of content. Obviously, apologetics is important. We're told in the scriptures to always have a reason, always be able to defend our faith with love and respect. But we also, I feel, maybe sometimes with this online culture and this obsessiveness with information, I think we forget that this faith is also about a human being that we're supposed to have a relationship with. And so I've with my son coming into the world and with all of the chaos that entailed with him being premature and all that, he's doing great. He's perfectly healthy. Thank God.
Praise God. Yeah.
But that just made me think, how do I want the faith to be experienced by him? And I really don't want it to be primarily an intellectual exercise. I want it to be something that he lives and something that he finds joy and peace and beauty in. And so that really led to me just kind of rethinking everything. And I go into that in a lot more detail in that video. I won't rehash the whole thing here, but yeah,
Mm.
that's the short version of it.
And so that's interesting. You say that obviously knowledge has, yeah, as you said, the knowledge of the faith has a great role to play in the Catholic
Hmm.
life, but also you emphasize that it's about a relationship with a person, Jesus Christ, right? And so,
Right.
and there's something about beauty itself, about the transcendental beauty, as you see it in a piece of art or in a person, or something else that can communicate the truth of what you just said, the relationship with Jesus Christ, in a much more direct way than simply having the facts, knowing the information about him. So
Right.
what if you could just give one example, what's like one of the most beautiful aspects of the Catholic faith that you didn't think you were communicating in your apologetical work before this channel shift?
Yeah, I think oh man, what I love about since becoming Catholic, I've been Catholic now since I was confirmed in 2024, and I noticed such a difference coming from a background of as a child evangelicalism, and in my early reversion to Christianity from atheism, I was back to evangelicalism. And what I noticed was that that version of Christianity was really putting forth this image of God as this obviously like very triumphant figure, which Jesus Christ is triumphant on the cross and in his resurrection. But it was more of an emphasis on the power and glory and the victory of God over Satan and over sin and death. But there was less of a focus on the humility that is expressed by Jesus Christ and how we can live that out ourselves, how we're called to live that out ourselves. We're commanded to. Jesus tells the apostles that if you want to be the greatest in the kingdom, you have to be the servant of all. And I just, reflecting recently on the humility of Jesus Christ in becoming a baby and, reposing on Mary within her womb and then on her afterwards, relying on another human that way. And going through what he did, suffering the most painful and humiliating death possible at the hands of his own creation for the salvation of that creation. It's just such a beautiful thing. And so I think the emphasis on humility is uh, much stronger in Catholicism than I've seen in other branches of Christianity that I've explored. And I really, I feel like in the age of the internet, especially, we're very much trying to win one over on each other. We're trying to get the clip of me owning the other guy and I made him look so silly and whatever. And I think that we often lose sight of that humility that Jesus Christ exemplified for us and calls us to. And yeah, just reflecting on the humility of God, even in the Eucharist, especially in the Eucharist, when we go and receive the Eucharist, it's God becoming God indwelling, God, uniting himself with this bread so that he can unite himself with us. And how often we neglect that or, partake of it in not the most respectful manner. Um, it's, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to end that thought in a nice way, but that's where I'll leave it.
Do you think maybe speaking more about the dangers of apologetics, maybe as you say a lot in your video that you dropped, the head knowledge of what the Eucharist is, how do we explain the modes of being and the substance and the accidents and everything. It's very good to know all that, but you can get a little bit lost in it to the point where you forget to reflect on what's actually happening, which is that Jesus is becoming so humble as to take on the appearances of bread and wine, like the most common things imaginable for the creator of the universe. And again, not to denigrate knowledge of that intricate theology, but if it's not
Right.
paired with a love for the object of that knowledge, then what are we really doing with that knowledge? Are we simply wielding it rather than actually allowing it to transform us? Is that what you started to
Hmm.
notice?
Yeah, exactly. And I hope I get across in the video itself that this is not me saying that apologetics is bad or that people
Hmm.
who pursue apologetics are bad or something.
Yeah, that is not
Apologetics
the
is the
message we
reason that
want to
I
communicate on Catholic Answers Live. Let's make that
right.
clear.
I mean, Catholic Answers, the book "Behold Your Mother" by Tim Staples, is the reason I became Catholic. Like, Mary attracted me to the faith, and then him explaining Mary in a way that was much better than I've heard elsewhere is what solidified it for me. And so I definitely believe there's a place for apologetics. But yeah, if you understand everything there is to know about God, but you don't actually enter into a life that pursues God, then man, what really is the point? And I was finding in myself that this was a weakness that I had, and that I still have, where I would read the scriptures and verses that should, elicit some sort of, you know, a love out of you or an appreciation for God's mercy and goodness. Where for me, like, oh yeah, how could Protestants read that and not understand that this is
Oh,
talking about the
yes.
Eucharist? And
Oh, that's
and
so
and it's
real.
like I don't want right. I don't want my practice of the faith, and certainly not my son's practice of the faith. I gesture because he's in a crib right there. Um, to be one that's like defensive and angry and argumentative. I want this to be a source of peace and joy, and love.
Well, let's take a break right now, and let's tug on that thread a little bit more when we get back to talk about getting away from that kind of combative sense of reading the scriptures and the things of our faith, and getting them more into a headspace of beauty, comfort, and joy in the faith. So if anyone wants to jump in on the conversation, dial 888-318-7884 to talk to Adrian and I about the beauty of the Catholic faith. And as I said, we got to go to a break right now, but we'll be right back to continue this conversation on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool and your homeschool co-op, is the sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
Alexian Brothers is a proud sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. For 800 years, these Catholic brothers have offered a prophetic and daring response to the gospel, serving Christ in the sick, the poor, and the dying. Is God calling you to be a courageous disciple? If you feel called to total self-giving as a religious brother in the mission of Jesus, call our vocations office at 847-264-8703. That's 847-264-8703. AlexianBrothers.org.
Proclaiming the faith, changing lives.
The year was 1999. The shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament of Our Lady of the Angels Monastery in Hanceville, Alabama is consecrated. Mother Angelica says, "The happiest day of my life was the day this church was dedicated."
To learn more about Mother Angelica's life and the history of EWTN, visit EWTN.com/Mother Angelica.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Thomas Graff, social media director, most of the time here at Catholic Answers, but filling in for Cy Kellett. Well, he is away on the Catholic Answers cruise on the Rhine River in Germany. He'll be back sometime next week to take the reins back over. For now, we are talking with Adrian Lawson of the YouTube channel Sips with Sarah about his recent change in channel output, away from apologetics output and more towards, as you said, it was a spiritual formation and catechesis. And this was really driven, I got the sense in your video, this was really driven by by several things, but one of them being a sense of how the beautiful really penetrates the soul, and how you wanted to start making more content that did that. And so to that end, maybe we can go through just sort of the beats of your video. You mentioned several different moments that made you realize you needed to change direction here. So maybe we can go through them one by one and see like what caused you to shift this output. So the first one was as you mentioned. I'll let you get into the details of it. But the first one was a man who essentially said, right? He said, "I don't know enough to become Catholic." Now, can you tell us how in the world how in the world someone could say something like that?
Yeah, so I met this guy at a premiere for an EWTN show, and it was I was just kind of invited, like, do you want to come with me to this thing? And I was like, sure. And this guy was like, "Hey, I know your YouTube channel," and he was raised Catholic. He was telling me all of this. I was raised Catholic. I was baptized. I got First Communion, confirmation. Like, I go to Mass, but I don't know if I know enough to be Catholic, because I don't know as much as you guys like on YouTube know. And I immediately just was like, no, like, wait, stop, no.
That's
I just had
devastating. What? What are you talking
yeah,
about?
exactly. And so yeah, and so we were talking, and then there was a part where we were in a church, and there's a big crucifix with Jesus on it, and I'm like, this whole faith, everything we're learning about, everything we're discussing on YouTube, all of it is aimed towards having a relationship with that guy that's on the cross, that loves us so much that he went to the cross. That is the whole point of this. And even if you don't have any of this knowledge, and I one of the analogies I used was like, if there was a little grandma in wherever, and all she does is she goes to mass every day, or even just every Sunday, she prays the rosary every day. But if you were to ask her, like, why do you believe in transubstantiation? And she'd be like, well, I don't even know what that word means, first of all. So I don't know if I even believe in it, because I've never heard that word before. Or if you were to ask her, explain the Trinity, she would have no idea. But yet she would have a better relationship with God than somebody who knows all of these things and yet neglects to live it out because of pride or whatever else. And so that's like all of the apologetic stuff. This is meant to be a supplement to our faith, to help us have confidence in our faith, to help us explain our faith to others. But it's not supposed to be the goal of our faith. It's just to acquire head knowledge. And so that was the first sign to me that the content I'm making is putting out perhaps the wrong image. And I know that I've pursued knowledge for the wrong reasons many times. And maybe that was coming across in my videos. So it really caused me to reflect and kind of reconsider what I was doing.
Yeah, it's a really tough line to walk, right? Because we need answers. Like, Catholics can't be afraid of answers. And if this grandma you're talking about, or let's say the French peasant of the 10th century that we always love to invoke when when the news gets a little too scary for us, if they can't answer those questions that you mentioned, that has no impact at all on whether they can love God enough. Where those answers are necessary are where you might be evangelizing someone, or you might be coming under fire for your beliefs. And then someone, in order to convince someone of the reasonableness of the Catholic position, then you would want to go and find answers for that person. But the danger in acquiring knowledge, right, is that it's such a temptation to pride. It's such a temptation to building myself up as someone who knows these things and hoarding it for myself almost. And so it's a fine line to walk. And I've talked to the apologists who work here at Catholic Answers, and they say you need a robust spiritual life to do this. You really, really need to be on guard against that all the time, which is why they're the best in the world at it. Because let me tell you, it comes through. If you ask me, it comes through with our guys that they are not hoarding this knowledge for themselves, and they really do it out of a love of Jesus Christ. We do have a couple callers on the lines who want to join the conversation. So Tracy in Oklahoma, thanks for calling in, Tracy. You're on the line. What do you want to say to Adrian?
Well, I just hearing you talk, it brings so much to me, and I'm honestly kind of relieving a little bit here. That I'm not the only one that struggles with this. I was, converted through powerful faith and personal relationship, and then converted further into Catholicism because I grew to accept and understand, the logic of the Eucharist, and it was a very intimate thing. And I'm a fairly new convert, but I have fallen into the trap of information for information's sake. I now intellectually assent that there's no possible way that I can ever doubt God because I know too much. But I'm having trouble living in that relationship that I used to have now.
Yeah, that's very relatable. Yeah, and that's what I was finding with myself. Oftentimes, and I kind of knew I was doing this, but I wasn't, maybe I wasn't honest with myself about it, where I would be, I'd have the opportunity to go to adoration, or I'd have the opportunity to go to confession, and I would instead be making a YouTube video or be doing research or reading or whatever else. And just things that, okay, well, if I'm substituting the actual thing that gives me connection to God for learning more head knowledge about God, then I'm doing this for the wrong reasons. And so that was another thing I was noticing in myself. But yeah, that's what you're saying is very relatable.
Tracy, are you kind of wondering how to get back into the space where you have both the head knowledge and also a real relationship with God?
Yeah, I mean, I try to, I do have a prayer time every day. I read the Bible and, more additional reading every day. I'm going through a bunch of podcasts from Ascension, and every once in a while I'll break out the rosary, not as much as I used to, but I've been going to confession on a weekly basis, basically, because there's, stuff I'm struggling with. But yeah, I still feel like there's a block there that you didn't used to be there.
Yeah,
So anymore,
I mean, I can only speak to, I can speak to what's helped me. I know that the rosary has helped me immensely. The more I pray the rosary, the better my relationship with God becomes, and like the more, I would say, the more connected I feel to God. So the rosary is huge for me because it really is like this. You're turning off noise and you're really just sitting in silence or relative silence and meditating on the mysteries of the gospel. And when you do that, you're like disconnecting from the noise is so important. It's really hard with our phones and stuff nowadays. We're always like scrolling or listening to something, which oftentimes there are good things that we're consuming, but still the noise itself is, it can kind of impede conversation with God, I find. So I've tried to, be consistent with the rosary, and then even just doing mundane tasks around the house, I try to do them in silence and try to just invite God into those things and use them as a time for prayer. Which I believe comes from like the Carmelite spirituality, or a lot of monastic spirituality, but Carmelite spirituality I've been learning about recently. But yeah, that type of stuff has helped me a lot, and even going to adoration. These moments that we're really entering into silence, I think, is very important.
Really good point. What do you think of that, Tracy?
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I appreciate it.
Great, yeah, and I mean, I think one thing I would add to that, Tracy, is like you're already on the path just in virtue of showing up to prayer every day or almost every day, because part of a relationship, any relationship, it's not always going to be about how you feel from day to day, right? Anyone who's married can tell you that, but what's so much more important than that is simply showing up for the other person, right? Showing up and being consistent. And if you're showing up for God, then you're showing him that you desire a relationship, even if it doesn't always feel every day like you're getting any further than just knowing propositions about the faith and assenting to them. The fact that anyone would continue showing up in spite of all that shows a real desire, which is in fact what a relationship is all about. It's about the desire for the other. So what do you think of that, Tracy?
Yeah, that again it absolutely makes sense, and I think I know this stuff. I sometimes forget.
Mm-hmm. No, it's easy to forget for sure. But thank you for the call, Tracy. We really appreciate that. It's so real, right? It's what you have to get past is the idea that your prayer time is worthless if you don't feel anything, right? I'm not saying that
Right.
our caller was saying that or anything, but that's a trap that I've fallen in a lot. And sometimes you can think
Same.
that maybe the solution to that is I just need more knowledge. I need more knowledge. I need more books. I need to learn more about that. And that can facilitate a greater love. But it's also easy to just lose sight of what you're actually doing, which is showing up for God every day.
Yeah, and I find that there was a recent convert to Protestantism, actually, from, I guess, agnosticism, and he's a beautiful guy, and he's really excited about his faith. But he kind of touched on something that I kind of fell into when I was, and still fall into. That he's like I like to listen to music really loud because it makes me feel the presence of God, and I feel like when we look in the scriptures, actually the opposite tends to be true. That God speaks in those moments of silence, and so I think we rely on media to kind of give us a feeling of connection with God, listening to somebody who speaks very beautifully or listening to very beautiful music. These can be instruments that God is trying to use to reach out to us. But I think also that the silence is the primary way, at least according to some of the saints like Saint Teresa of Avila and others, especially in the Carmelite tradition, which I'm kind of obsessed with right now, if you haven't noticed. But they talk about like enter into the silence. That's where God primarily wants to speak to us. And I think that's reflected in the scriptures as well.
Yeah, we had a great staff retreat several months ago with an amazing local priest, Father Fadi, and it was all about the importance of silence in the spiritual life, and how and one of the things I remember most of all was that silence reveals us to ourselves. That's one of God's primary uses of silence, is to reveal our hearts to ourselves and show us how God actually sees us, because it's so easy to drown that out with noise, and stimulation from everywhere we look, right?
Right.
So the music's coming up, so we are coming up on a hard break. But when we come back, we're going to keep talking to Adrian Lawson of Sips with Sarah about the beauty of the Catholic faith, and how we can continue cultivating a love for that beauty instead of just knowledge for its own sake. So we'll be right back to keep talking about that on Catholic Answers Live.
The world has a lot of questions about Catholicism. It's a big faith, and it deserves a big book of answers. Well, now it has two. Get the Big Book of Catholic Answers, Volume 2, and have 300 clear, reliable Catholic answers right at your fingertips, whenever something comes up at work, with friends, or around the dinner table. Order your copy of the Big Book of Catholic Answers, Volume 2 at shop.catholic.com, or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun, and that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Want to be a more powerful witness for Christ? One of the most powerful evangelization tools you can acquire is, in fact, courtesy. The apostolate of courtesy is just the message the church needs in this time of diminished social grace. Inspired by St. Francis de Sales, author Robert Grieving shows how everyday manners, whether in conversation or emails, can make us powerful witnesses for Christ. Get the Apostolate of Courtesy today at shop.catholic.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking about the beauty of the Catholic faith with Adrian Lawson from Sips with Sarah. My name is Thomas Graff, social media manager for Catholic Answers Live, filling in for Cy Kellett. And Adrian, a few weeks ago, put out a video saying he was quitting Catholic apologetics, which didn't mean he was quitting Catholicism, thank goodness. Didn't mean he was quitting YouTube, thank goodness, but it did mean that he was taking things in a different direction and talking less about the reasons to believe or the reasons to not listen to this or that anti-Catholic argument, but rather about how to form yourself through spirituality and catechesis to fall more in love with the person of Jesus Christ. Would you say that's an accurate summary of what your goal is now?
Beautiful. Yes.
Nice. That's what happens when you watch someone's video and pay attention to it. Yeah. Well,
exactly. I wish more commenters would do that.
Oh, goodness, you and me both, right? No, it's just we love our commenters. Please leave all the comments, boost the algorithm, and let us know that we're not doing this work in vain. But so in that video, you mentioned there were kind of three major events that influenced you to make this change. And the first one was the man who said he felt like he didn't know enough to become Catholic, which is not the impression that anyone should want to leave someone. The faith is for all of us. It's for the spiritual babes, and it's for the adults, and it's for everyone in between. We need milk just as much as we need meat. But the second one, you mentioned it briefly before at the beginning of the show, but you said it was something about some artwork of the Blessed Mother that made you realize that you wanted your work to change. Can you go a little more into what that was like?
Yeah, so this was the same night that I met that gentleman who told me that he didn't know enough to be Catholic, and So at the premiere of this show, this EWTN show, there's a part where there's a woman who is who's selling her this painting that she made of Mary, and she kind of was like, I don't know why I painted this. I don't really understand, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. And then the host of the show buys it from her. It's this great moment. But the beauty of it is that it's Mary looking at Saint Joseph teaching Jesus how to be a carpenter, and Jesus is like a little bit older than we usually see, like in the infant depictions of him. And it was just this expression on Mary's face, and it's happened other times before as well. Like there's the painting of Mary holding, Jesus as he lay lifeless in her arms, and just the image of heartbreak on her face. And I think it's just these emotional expressions that are expressed or shown through these pieces of artwork that really, I don't know why specifically, but they really just like pierce my heart in a good way, and it just like softens me, and I usually break down in tears. And it's an encounter that I don't fully know how to explain, but I just know that that's something that I want more people to feel, like to actually feel that these are real people that we're learning about, and they have real feelings, and these pieces of art are ways that we enter into those moments and encounter them in a more human way.
What I remember you saying in the video that stuck with me was you said it crushed you. Seeing that video, you said it crushed you in the best way possible. And what a striking way to talk about beauty, right? When we think of beauty just like offhand, we just think, a sunset. We think, something that looks nice. I mean, even St. Thomas, I think he says it's that which when seen pleases. But there's something so much more visceral about you saying it crushed you. Like, why did you put it that way?
I think it's just because the when I saw the image both times now, it was like an uncontrollable response that I just started sobbing, and I was just like, it just kind of like a heartbreak, but in a beautiful way, like a good heartbreak, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making sense. And it just made me fall more in love with Jesus and his mother and our faith and the church, and in a more human way. I don't think I'm explaining this well, but
I mean,
I'm trying.
It's clear what you went through based on that. I mean, I think we all can relate to some experience or another like that. But I guess when you say it was like involuntary, right? That's sort of what's crushing about it. Is it's like this wave of beauty, for lack of a better word. That's what we're talking about. But this wave crashes over you, and there's nothing you can do to stop it when you see something truly beautiful that grabs hold of you and stops you in your place. And so crushing is a really good way to describe that, because it sort of breaks you, right? It's sort of and I suppose in this way, I suppose that might be the right way to talk about it, because it in fact influenced you to make a wholesale change in content on your YouTube channel, right? Like it sort of broke you open and filled you with a desire to make other people experience what you had just experienced.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of this feeling that like, oh, these are real people. Like this is like Mary's a real person who watched her son die a horrible, painful, humiliating death, and she couldn't do anything about it. And she had to say yes to God in that moment, to like, okay, God, I'm trusting that this is part of your plan. And I don't know what's happening. Maybe she did know what's happening. Maybe Jesus told her what was going to happen. But either way, it's a horrible thing to experience. And especially having my son, and just like, I could never imagine, what that must feel like. And so just to realize that like, these are real people that we're trying to encounter and have a relationship with.
The reality is an interesting point that you keep bringing up. That because beauty can't be false, right? You can't fake beauty. You can't show someone something ugly and say this is actually beautiful without doing some real mental gymnastics. Yeah, they've tried. They sure have tried, but they've done some real mental gymnastics to do so. But I see what you mean when you say the realization, or not the realization, but the re-recognition that these events, the incarnation, God becoming man, actually took place. That has a way of taking you over and driving home the message so much more clearly, rather than just these are images on a holy card that we're seeing again and again and again. It's not a static thing anymore.
Right. Or like just things we say in the creed. And you know,
Mhm.
you would kind of, you know, we go through the motions and we say like, yeah, well, you know, God became man. It was conceived of the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate. Uh, all of, you know, kind of just brush by that oftentimes. But it's like, wait. God became a baby? Like that is something to reflect on. And that's crazy. And, you know, God coming to earth, having the ability to do it himself without any need of a human, chose to use Mary in that way to bring himself into the world through Mary. Okay, well, that's kind of a big deal. Like these are things we need to oftentimes like reflect on more deeply than we do, and so these artworks kind of force you to do that sometimes when they strike at your heart that way.
So how are you doing that on your channel now? What's one example of something you've done to try to bring that experience to other people?
Yeah, I think I mean, it's only been a couple weeks since that video, so I'm honestly still reflecting about that. But I think talking about things from a more human perspective, and instead of coming at things as like, you know, here's this belief, here's why it's true, here's why the other people are wrong. Instead, just talking about like, isn't this amazing? Like, I did an interview with Father Robert Spitzer, an absolute legend, and we talked about the Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we talk about these amazing findings that have been done through the you know, investigation of the tilma. And instead of just using this as like, yeah, see, so therefore Catholicism is true because this miracle happened in the Catholic tradition, just like, isn't this cool? Like, aside from all of the intellectual debate you want to have about it, isn't this just cool and crazy and beautiful that Mary would come to earth when, you know, she's queen of heaven and earth? She doesn't need us, she doesn't need anything. She's like in this high position, and certainly God is as well, in a much higher position, infinitely higher position. But yet they choose to enter into creation at times when the church needs them, and they do these beautiful things for us, which is just like so cool, and we should be grateful.
That's a really good point. Like, it's I don't want to come off too facile, but like that is a way you could think of meditation almost. Is just pondering a mystery and just thinking, how cool is this? This is really cool that you have this garment that that science shows is impossible to have created by human hands at that point. That's cool. Let's think about how God decided to do something really cool for us in order. Again, like it comes off facile when you say it like that, but it's something that God wants to do for us that He has no obligation whatsoever to do. And I know I think I'm trying to render it in terms that a modern audience can appreciate, because you know, we've sort of lost the sense of the beautiful and the transcendent. You know, we live in a society that doesn't value that as much as it certainly used to, and the closest that it comes to sometimes is just standing back and saying, "Whoa, that's cool." And so if we can sort of bring the modern world back to an appreciation of the beautiful and the mysteries of our faith by just saying, first, this is cool, and then the more you think about how cool it is, the more you realize it's actually profound and mysterious and speaks of a love that's just impossible to fathom.
And I think people are willing to hear you out in a more open-minded sense. You know, I hear from a lot of people who are like, how can I convince my parents that this is right or something like that? And I think oftentimes people need to encounter the faith in a way that's not defensive or offensive, in a way that's just like, hey, here's this cool thing that happened and here's all the evidence for it. Like, isn't this cool? And somebody who's maybe antagonistic towards the faith might just, if you present this in a way that's not, you know, antagonizing their faith, they're just like, I mean, yeah, that is pretty cool. I mean, if I'm being honest, that is pretty cool. And if you encounter things like that in a human way, I think even it has an apologetic value in and of itself as well.
Yeah. Let's stand back and appreciate this for a second before I try to convince you of all the inner workings of it. Like, this is really cool. It's really cool to think about. What if the saints actually could intercede for us in heaven? What if they could hear our prayers and relay them to God just because? Not because God needs it, but just because. Isn't that cool to think about? Isn't that a really profound possibility? Okay, now you agree that does sound cool. So let's talk about why we actually believe it is the case. That seems like the proper ordering of spirituality and then apologetics as necessary, right?
Yeah, that's perfectly put. Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to our last break, when we get back, we do have a couple of callers on the line who want to talk to it's Adrian Lawson from Sips with Sarah about the beauty of the Catholic faith and rediscovering it. So we'll go to our last break of the hour here, and when we get back, we'll get to those callers right here on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Support for Catholic Answers Live comes from the Graduate School of Theology at Christendom College. Deepen your understanding of the Catholic faith through live online graduate courses, taught with uncompromising fidelity to the Church's magisterium, from Christology and bioethics to Mariology and more. This summer, you can also attend the Institute for Liturgical Formation on campus. Begin your master's degree or earn a certificate at graduatetheology.com. That's graduatetheology.com.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
This is Jim Pinto, Director of EWTN Media Missionaries. Mother Angelica said, "The essence of evangelization is to tell everybody Jesus loves you." You can help EWTN share the good news by becoming a media missionary. Visit EWTNmissionaries.com today and join us in sharing the eternal word with the world.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We're talking about the beauty of the Catholic faith with Adrian Lawson from the YouTube channel Sips with Sarah. I'm Thomas Graff, most of the time the social media manager here at Catholic Answers, filling in for Cy Kellett as he is off on the Catholic Answers cruise. We do have a couple of callers on the line who want to join the conversation with Adrian and I. So we'll go over to Ari, who's calling from Logansport, Indiana, watching us on YouTube. Ari, welcome to the show. Go right ahead.
Hi. Hi, Adrian. It's good to hear from you, brother.
Hey.
So I did have a question for you. So my thing is, I've been cradle Catholic my entire life, and just several years ago is when I started to really dive deep into my faith, because I was more of a cultural Catholic, and I started to realize when I started my process of taking my faith seriously, I grew a new appreciation for the Mass, and a huge love for it. But I feel like slowly, as I now that I'm getting older and everything, I can see that is starting to decrease. It's been getting kind of hard for me to find the beauty in the Mass again, even though I know exactly what happens at the Mass, but sometimes it can feel like it's just very repetitive, or it can feel like, oh, I'm just going because it's an obligation. So what, I guess, general advice would you give, for example, for somebody like me to be able to kind of break out of that mentality?
Yeah, I think also good to hear from you. How you doing? Glad to hear from you. But I think that it's normal, right? Because it is a thing we do every Sunday at least, and then we do that for several years, and we're like, okay, this is it's very similar every single time. But I think that there's kind of like the scriptures, there's always something new to be discovered within it, and even what we already know, there's more depth to those things that we know than we think. As far as how to recapture that appreciation for the Mass, man, Thomas, what do you think?
You gonna pass the buck off to me? The first place my mind goes is sometimes you need to ask a really, really, really basic question about something that again, like Adrian was saying, sometimes you know a lot more about something than you think. So this isn't about the Mass necessarily, but it is about reading the scriptures, and that can also get kind of repetitive, right? And you can start to lose the sense of the beauty in it. But if you just ask a really basic question, like in the prologue to John's Gospel, it says in him, right, Jesus was light, and the light was the life of men. And so one time I was meditating on that passage, and I just thought to ask myself, like, what is light? What does it do actually? That's a lot to think about. But I realized, light is something that makes the world around us knowable. For the majority of us who aren't blind, right? Blind people can come to knowledge in other ways, but take it in the obvious sense. Light makes things knowable, right? And so if Christ is, if the divinely inspired author is saying Jesus is light, and that light is the life of men, then that means Jesus is making something else knowable to us, right? And what does the rest of the gospel tell us about that? Is that he's making the Father known to us. He who has seen me has seen the Father, right? So all of a sudden, just by asking one simple question, you've got a great brand new lens to read the whole gospel through. It's like, how is Jesus as light just making the Father knowable to us in everything that he does, right? So that's an example from the scriptures. I think I need to apply that in the Mass because, Ari, I'll tell you what, most of my life has felt the same going to Mass. It's something that I do over and over and over again. So maybe that's an exercise we can all do this next Sunday or the next daily Mass you go to is pick one thing about the Mass, ask a very simple, basic question about it. What is sacrifice? What is the purpose of these readings? And then maybe that can bring the rest of the liturgy to life for you. What do you think of that?
Because I know, like, for example, I know I'm not the only person that's felt like that. And so like for me, like sometimes I'm like, man, I try to go back right to the mentality that I was when I first rediscovered everything. When I realized, hey, this is what's actually happening during Mass. Like, how beautiful is that? Like, it got to a point where I used to cry during Mass because, like, when the Eucharist was coming up, like, it was just like very like. It's because the more that I found information about certain things, the more I grew in appreciation for it. But now it's like, okay, now I know now I know, like, I have the knowledge. It's kind of like what you guys were saying. We have the knowledge, but now it's like, okay, now what? Like, it doesn't seem like I can kind of take off just the knowledge lens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very relatable. And I've, being a convert, I've gone through that as well, where I'm like, I have this great appreciation for the Mass, then I find it kind of mundane, and then I have a great appreciation for it again. And I think in the times that I do find it mundane, as I'm going up to receive the Eucharist, I've often said a prayer like, Jesus, I know that you're present in the Eucharist, and I know that this is an incredible thing that I'm about to experience, and I'm so sorry that I'm not giving it the proper reaction that it's due. And I don't feel the appreciation that I should for this right now, but please, through your indwelling me through this Eucharist, please help me acquire that. And our honest prayers to God, even in ways that's like this part of me that is just like not appreciating you, God, I just give that to you. And I hope that you can work with that and heal that. I think that's just a beautiful thing as well to do.
Yeah, great point. Offering that part of ourselves up to God and letting him work on that. It's what he did for us, right? He offered himself up to us so that he could heal us that way. And so if we continue to offer up the parts of us that we think are giving him inadequate worship, he's going to be able to transform those just as well. Thank you for that call, Ari. That was a really great discussion we had there. Let's go now to Patrick, who's listening from Beaverton, Oregon. Patrick, you are on the air with Adrian. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, Adrian. I watched your video when it first came out on, you're changing, your heart changed from just strictly apologetics to more spiritual formation. I loved it. I could relate so much with it because I can get caught up in the aggressive, apologetic thinking and reading scriptures and be like, oh, well, just all these Protestants need to just convert right away,
Just read John 6.
I'm calling because, yeah. I'm calling because I'm a Catholic convert as well. I was raised kind of just without any religion per se, so I was kind of just spiritual, not religious. Then I became non-denominational. My wife is non-denominational, and as I continued to ask questions, it was like, oh, it's the Catholic Church. So I was received in a few years ago, and nice. I'm now a member of the Militia of Immaculata, I think just praying the rosary over the last couple of years has kind of just worked on my heart slowly. And whereas the Marian doctrines, dogmas were really something I just couldn't even think about when I first converted to the Catholic Church, now it's something that's like obviously very important and similar sounding to kind of what you've gone through. I'm curious how you would respond though to others in your life. I'm sure you could relate, where I have some people in my life who are very secular, could care less about the things of God, care less about the religious, the spiritual world. I have some people in my life who are like non-denominational and would just be like, oh, just believe in Jesus. Why worry about this Mary stuff? And we don't need to go to church on Sundays. God is, he's not just making sure you check a box and all this stuff. And then I have some others who are Catholics, but just seemingly don't. In my mind, I'm like, how could I stir them up a little bit more to the things of God? So I'm just curious how, pick one of those three groups, how you'd respond to kind of, now that you've had this new approach, new mindset.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what's been transpiring lately, and it started with my relationship with my grandparents, which I've talked about a lot on my YouTube channel. They're evangelicals who were not happy about my conversion, and that's been a whole interesting back and forth between myself and them. But they initially we would have a lot of arguments, and I would bring up Bible verses, and I would, so to speak, like dunk on them or whatever with superior Bible knowledge and all that stuff. That never moved their heart a single bit. What moved their heart was seeing some kind of an actual change in me, and like seeing the devotedness that I approach the faith with. And they have other evangelicals in their life who are kind of the same way, like, we don't really need to go to church. And then they see me and I'm like, oh no, I go to church every Sunday, and then I even go to confession. And even though they don't like confession, they're like, okay, well, I respect the devoutness you have there. But even more than that, the spiritual fruits that they have seen hopefully grow in me, like whatever. I know that I've become a lot less argumentative as of late with them, which I know they appreciate. And I think just things like that are the things where they're like, you're actually growing. Like, I can tell that you're changing in a positive way. And so even if I don't understand this stuff and I have my objections to it, I know that this is doing something good for you. And so maybe there's something there that I'm not considering. And so since hopefully that's been showing in my life, my grandparents have been asking questions about Catholicism from a curiosity perspective rather than an argumentative perspective. So they're like, yeah, why are the priests celibate? Or how does the Catholic Church handle money? And like, these evangelical pastors are getting very rich, and I don't think that's right. How does the Catholic Church handle this? And stuff like that. So they're asking me a lot of questions about the Pope and stuff like that from a curiosity perspective. I think because they're seeing something beautiful happening in my life, and it's softening their heart towards that, and they want to know more about it. And it's not the easiest or fastest route, but I think it is the surest.
That reminds me of a really great insight by our late Holy Father Pope Benedict XVI, who said at one point that he said, "I'm convinced that the true apologetics for the Christian message, the most persuasive proof of its truth, are the saints on the one hand, and the beauty that the faith has generated on the other." And that's a really good point. I mean, we all have a long way to go to before being saints. But the point you just made about having an actual change in your life and showing how devoted you were to your family, thanks to this new faith, that actually made them more curious about the truths of the faith, rather than just, as you said, just going blow for blow with them with Bible verses and everything. That's actually proving Pope Benedict's point. Is that testimony you gave?
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that call, Patrick. I'm sorry about that, missing your name for a second. And thank you so much for a great conversation, Adrian. And best of luck with the new direction on your channel.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been a great conversation here, talking about the beauty of the faith. Apologies to the callers we couldn't get to on this topic. But next up on our second hour, we are going to be talking with Dr. Gregory Popchak about the sanctity of marriage. What does it mean to say that marriage is sacred? What do people get wrong about preserving the sanctity of marriage? And how does he faithfully counsel couples who are seriously considering ending their marriage? We will talk about all that and more next hour. So call 888-318-7884 if you want to get in on that conversation. We'll be right back.